In this video, I'm going to be discussing 1 meal a day versus 2 meal a day. Which one is better and more effective for long-term fat loss and improved health outcomes? As always, there are going to be positives and negatives for each one, and certain people may be suited for each method. So we're going to be going into detail about that. I'm also going to be diving into what is the biggest mistake that I see people make with intermittent fasting time and time again. Making that mistake basically means that it just becomes a short-term fad diet rather than a sustainable way of life. I'm Max Lowry. I'm an author, fat loss coach, and intermittent fasting advocate. I've personally been intermittent fasting for over 10 years, and I've also helped thousands of other people make intermittent fasting a sustainable way of life and effective fat loss tool. So what I'm discussing today is just one small topic in the big subject of intermittent fasting. If you want to learn everything that you need to know about intermittent fasting, then check out my free intermittent fasting short course by clicking that link below. Okay, so let's start with 1 meal per day. It's exactly how it sounds. You only eat 1 meal in a day. It ends up being roughly 22 to 24 hour fast, which is quite extreme, especially when you're doing it every single day. It can be an incredibly effective fat loss tool, and it makes sense. Obviously, you're only eating 1 meal in a day, so you're going to be drastically decreasing the amount of calories that you're eating and making it harder to eat more calories, making it harder to eat in a calorie surplus. So let's talk about the benefits of 1 meal per day. Well, you are likely to lose weight relatively quickly. It is quite drastic, it's quite extreme. You will also quite quickly improve insulin sensitivity, which is essential for long-term overall physical health and the reduction of metabolic disease like type 2 diabetes, and potentially increase the chances of experiencing autophagy, which is your cell's self-cleaning mechanism. It's also very simple. If you don't enjoy cooking and preparing food, then only having to do it once per day is obviously going to be much easier. And then we have the negatives. Like I said earlier, it is pretty extreme, especially if you are new to intermittent fasting. You could experience a lot of the initial negative side effects in quite extreme ways when following the 1 meal day. Those can include headaches, irritability, lethargy, and brain fog. These negative side effects do decrease as you get used to it, but if you go straight into the 1 meal a day, it is likely to be quite extreme. There are also other negatives which, no matter how long you've been doing it, no matter how you get used to it, can still be an issue. For some people, it's going to be very taxing on your digestion. To eat 1 massive meal in a day means that you need to release a load of digestive enzymes and acid to deal with that meal. If you have any underlying issues with digestion, it's definitely not advisable that you incorporate the 1 meal a day. It's also much more complicated and harder to get the right amount of nutrition, vitamins and minerals in on a day-to-day basis. It can end up with you being in quite a big calorie deficit, which kind of continues day by day, week by week. Being in too big a calorie deficit can cause problems in lots of different areas of your life. It can decrease motivation, decrease energy levels, affect your immune system, affect your sleep, and ultimately lead to your basal metabolic rate decreasing, which could make long-term fat loss more difficult. If you are particularly active, training multiple times a week, and you have a real focus on performance, 1 meal a day isn't going to cut it. You are very likely to experience a decrease in performance and an increase in recovery time, which isn't a good thing. For many of the people that I work with, they have had a lifetime of disordered eating, whether it's emotional eating, stress eating, or binge eating. 1 meal a day can exacerbate these issues, especially the binging. If hunger is building up throughout the day to the point where you are uncontrollably eating in the meal times, that's not constructive for a positive relationship with food and long-term success. Let me know in the chat if you're someone that has seen great success with 1 meal a day, but most importantly, have you been able to sustain it in the long term? Because I think that might be quite difficult. So then we have the 2 meal day, which again is exactly how it sounds. Either you're going to skip breakfast and just have lunch and dinner, or you skip dinner and just have breakfast and lunch. Only 2 meals in a day. By doing this, you're probably going to end up fasting for anywhere between 14 to 18 hours, which is much less extreme and therefore easier to sustain in the long term. This is how I personally live my life. I have been through periods of going through 1 meal day and 2 meal day, but the 2 meal day is what I do 99.9% of the time. So let's talk about the benefits. It's definitely better for beginners, right? It's much less extreme and you're less likely to experience the negative side effects that some people can get when they first start intermittent fasting. Again, it can be an incredibly effective weight loss tool because by dropping 1 meal, you are decreasing the amount of calories that you are eating. You're making it harder to eat in a calorie surplus. It's much easier to get the right amount of nutrition in 2 meals, so you're going to get all the vitamins and minerals that your body needs to function on a day-to-day basis. It's far less taxing on the digestion than 1 big meal in a day, which is potentially going to open it up as a possible fat loss tool for many, many more people. You can also incorporate incorporate the 2 meal day if you are incredibly active. As mentioned, this is something I've done for 10 years now. In those 10 years, I've been a sprinter, I've been an Olympic lifter, I've done marathons, I've done ultra marathons, and most recently, my big passion is mountaineering. I have maintained following the 2 meal day training for all those different events and practices. Above all, the biggest benefit of the 2 meal day is that it's sustainable in the long term. And for me, as a fat loss expert, I have a bit of a bias on sustainability. I care more about long-term gradual success than a big result in the short term that cannot be sustained. You may get a big result in a short amount of time with a 1 meal day, but you are unlikely to be able to sustain that in the long term, which is why I think the 2 meal day is better. What are the negatives of the 2 meal day? To be honest, I don't think there are many. I would say that for some people, it might still be possible to eat in a calorie surplus only eating 2 meals, particularly if you are quite good at eating massive portions of food in one sitting. And if you aren't in a calorie deficit and you're in a calorie surplus, you will not lose weight. Remember, I'm going to bust a fasting myth right here, right now, and that is that it is a magic pill for fat loss. It isn't. It can make it much easier, but just because you are fasting doesn't automatically mean you're going to lose weight. You have to achieve a calorie deficit, and fasting does make that much easier. Although I mentioned earlier that it is more suitable for beginners, some people might do better by gradually easing into the 2 meal day. I did create a 30-day reset, which will give you the habits and behaviors and the tools to ease into the process of intermittent fasting so you don't experience any of the negative side effects, and so that you're able to get long-term success with it rather than it just being another short-term fat diet. Again, let me know in the comments if you have had long-term success with the 2 meal day, if you've managed to make it a sustainable way of life. So which do I think is better, 1 meal a day or 2 meal day? As a coach, I never talk in absolutes. I'm not going to sit here and categorically say that everyone is going to do better for the 2 meal day, because that's not true. Everyone watching this video is going to have a unique set of circumstances. I would say that for most people, the 2 meal day is definitely going to be the better option. It's more sustainable. And ultimately, as a fat loss coach, all I care about is long-term success. It's easy to get a massive result in the short term. It's much harder to get long-term success. There might be a small percentage of people who do well with a 1 meal day in the long term, but they are going to be in the minority. If you want to make the most out of intermittent fasting, it needs to become a part of your life, a sustainable way of living, and that is much more likely to happen with a 2 meal day. So remember, at the beginning of this video, I told you that there is a big mistake that people make time and time again with intermittent fasting, and that is that people think that fasting is a fix-all solution to all their problems. It isn't. It is one tool in the toolbox. If you want to lose weight sustainably, get as fit as you possibly can, and be the best version of yourself, you need a wide array of tools at your disposal. Intermittent fasting will not fix issues with your mindset, your beliefs, your identity. If you have issues with self-confidence and self-belief and insecurities, intermittent fasting won't do that. And to be honest, with my one-on-one coaching clients, that is the bulk of what I work on. Addressing what I just mentioned will lead to long-term success. Failing to address them and just focusing on intermittent fasting is likely to only lead to short-term results. Intermittent fasting is definitely the goal for most of my coaching clients, but lots of basics need to be covered first before incorporating it. This is particularly true if you are anyone that has suffered from yo-yo diets, fad diets, hopping from one diet to the next for many, many years. You're likely to be suffering from something called the all or nothing mindset and black and white thinking, which can affect nearly every aspect of your life and is a really big problem, which I help my one-on-one coaching clients work through. Intermittent fasting will not address these. Really, I see all these issues that I mentioned as the root cause of why someone might be overweight, and intermittent fasting just treats the symptoms of why someone's overweight. So if you want long-term success, you need to work on the root causes. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hopefully this has been useful. Remember, I am a fat loss coach, so I do have a bias for long-term sustainable results, and that is why I do advise the 2 meal day. If you want to learn more about how to get long-term sustainable results, then make sure you hit subscribe and check out some of my other videos.